Okay, we need to, before we get too far into fractions, which is what this section is all about, we need to do some review about some terminology. So, if you'll remember, when we talk about fractions, we have a numerator, which is the top number, and then a denominator, which is the bottom number. So, for instance, if we had something like 5 over 6, 5 would be our numerator, 6 would be our denominator. Now, whenever we're looking at fractions, this bottom number here tells us either the size of the pieces, or you can also look at it as the number of pieces that it takes to make a whole. So, for instance, since this is a 6 in our denominator, that means it would take 6 pieces to create an entire amount. Or what we could also think about it is if I had a box that was cut into, let's say, 6 pieces here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would take all 6 of these to make the entire figure. Now the top number, it tells us how many pieces we're talking about. So to represent 5/6, we would have to say, well, that would be 5 out of the 6 boxes here. This would be a visual representation of the fraction 5/6. Okay, now there are two different types of fractions. Anytime you hear the word fraction, that is exactly what it says, a numerator and a denominator. Now the two different types are proper fractions and improper fractions. So we need to know what those words are and what they mean. A proper fraction has a value less than 1. Now that means that the denominator would be smaller than the denominator. So for instance, our example of 5/6. This is a proper fraction. It is truly a smaller part of the whole. So like whenever I did the visual representation up here, 5 out of the 6 pieces was not the entire rectangle that I drew. It's just a portion of it. So the numerator is smaller than the denominator, is called a proper fraction. Now the other type of fractions that we can have are improper fractions. And these can be one of two different looks here. They either have a value of 1 or greater. Now, if they have a value of 1, what that means is the numerator and the denominator are the same. So for instance, if we had 6 over 6, that would be a improper fraction because this actually represents an entire amount. So for instance, in that drawing that I did a while ago, that's not a very good drawing here. Let me try and do it again just a little bit better. Trying to cut my pieces semi the same size. If we had 6 out of these 6 pieces, that would represent the entire rectangle. So that is an improper fraction because it actually is 1. Now also, if the value is greater than 1, this means that the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So for instance, if I had 7 over 6, this would be an improper fraction. And if we think about it again using that same rectangle idea, I would have to draw in another rectangle over here so that I could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces. So this is more than an entire rectangle. It's a rectangle and a little bit more. Now I realize that these are not the same size pieces, which is bad for talking about fractions, but hopefully you get the idea. Improper fractions are the only ones that can be written either as a whole number or a mixed number. Now just to refresh what mixed numbers are, those are a combination of a whole number and a fraction. So our example here a while ago of 7 over 6, this is the same thing as saying 1 and 1/6. If we go back up to our drawing here, this was an entire rectangle and 1 out of the other 6 pieces. That's exactly what that represents.